Hello, and welcome back to another video. So, in this video, you, my subscribers, actually picked it. Those of you who voted on my poll that I posted a while ago, it feels like a while ago, I gave you two options of which video you would like me to do next after my Rainbow Reading Challenge is done. And it was between, I'll put a picture of the poll up somewhere on the screen. It was between me reading romances for a week or me reading my least read genre for a week. Now, obviously, as you can see the poll, reading my least read genre for week 1. So today is Monday, and I have until next Monday to read books in my least read genre. So my least read genre is sci-fi. Fun fact for you. If you couldn't tell by my shelf or any reorganizing video I have, I barely have any sci-fi on my shelf, and I do not gravitate towards that genre. Why? I don't really know. I just have never gravitated towards reading that. I've always been I'm a fantasy reader, so sci-fi I feel like sci-fi takes more brain power. But we're reading sci-fi for a week. So I decided to start it off with a sci-fi that I know will be easy for me to get into because I already understand the world and love said world, and that is Padawan by Kiersten White. It is a Star Wars book about Obi-Wan Kenobi during his being a Padawan to Qui-Gon Jinn. So this is before Phantom Menace and the movies. This takes place before that. It is a canon book. I made sure all of the books that I picked would be canon. And because I don't want to read non-canon Star Wars, what's the point of that if it doesn't apply to the actual timeline? So reading Padawan. I'm actually really excited for this because I've only read one other Star Wars book, and that was Dark Disciple, which was a Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress story. Sorry, someone just came to the door. So that's great. That was actually that book shocked me. For my first Star Wars book, that was an interesting one. So I'm really excited to dive back into the world of Star Wars. I am a huge Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. It's probably my favorite sci-fi ever. But I also, in my opinion, you can comment down below and tell me yours if you're a huge Star Wars fan. Star Wars, I feel like, is borderline sci-fi and fantasy because there are elements in Star Wars that just can't be explained scientifically. The Force being one of them. They try and explain it with like metachlorians and stuff like that, but honestly, it feels like a fantasy magical element. I'm just saying, oh my word, I actually did already start reading. I read a chapter the other day, so I'm not super far in on it. But I think I'm going to enjoy it. It's, I think, 410 pages. Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm going to enjoy it. I'm excited. So this is the first book I'll be reading this video. I'm planning on at least reading 2 books this week. I'm not going to try and be jump the gun and like, okay, I'm reading 4 books in a week. That'd be a lot. So I'm planning on reading Padawan, and then also planning on reading Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. This is probably the epitome of a sci-fi because it is in the year 2044. I think it's about a virtual reality video game-esque sci-fi. So this will be my next book if I can get through this before the week's over. Oh my word, this bookmark. Stay. Anyway, so I'm going to try and read these 2 books in this video. But we're starting, obviously, with Padawan. I'm really excited because again, like I said, the only other one, I can actually grab it. I read Dark Disciple. Hold up. Let's make sure you can read it. Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. This one was pretty good. This one was interesting. And I'm pretty sure it's canon. I can't remember or not. But I'm excited to see some young Obi-Wan. He's, I think, 16 in this book, so he's young in this, and I'm really excited to read about his journey throughout this book. So, let's dive in to Padawan. Update time. So it is now Tuesday. Opening clip was a Monday. I got to about 14% of the way through the book on Monday, and now it's Tuesday, and now I am 48% of the way through Padawan, and oh my word, it's heating up. It's heating up. I need to grab my computer that has my thoughts in it, because I've started taking notes for that now. 1 second. All right, here we go. I'm actually really enjoying this book. It was slow going at first. There's a lot of inner monologue, being as it is. Reload. Come on, I know you can work. There we go. We're gonna click onto it. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you guys this in this video. I've started keeping track of my thoughts and opinions on books as I read them, because sometimes I feel like when I come to sit down and update you guys on what I've been reading, I forget all the thoughts I had at that point in the book. Like, I had a thought about this, where did it go? It disappeared. So, and this will also help when I formulate my reviews on Fable. So if you want to read reviews of books starting probably around now, my reviews will get a lot better on Fable. So, and I don't really do reviews on Goodreads other than stars, so. Anyway, so yeah, Monday I got to 14% of the way through the book, and something that I noticed, very early on in the book, was that Obi-Wan, at this point, if you're a huge Star Wars fan, you kind of know a lot about his character. If you're not, then you won't really understand a lot about his character. But he's a very insecure and overthinks a lot. Which isn't wrong. He's very cautious in the future. Like, he's like, hey, let's take a minute, think this through before we jump in and do something. He's always been that way, but in this, he's very just insecure in his stance at the temple, with his master Qui-Gon. He doesn't feel like they work, like there's no compatibility there. And I wrote, this was just my thought, like, Obi-Wan is very insecure and an overthinker. This book, I'm sure, will follow his journey to becoming more sure of himself and his belief in the Force, which, looking back on it now that I'm, like, almost halfway through the book, yeah, it most definitely does challenge his belief in the Force and his stance with the Jedi, and challenge kind of his place in the world. Like, he's very questioning, like, does he deserve to be a Jedi? Is there, like, if he disappeared, would anybody miss him? Like, he's really, like, searching for a purpose at this point. And I also wrote, so, part of the plot of this, but I'm pretty sure I read the back of this book to you guys, but Obi-Wan takes off by himself, because Qui-Gon Jinn was supposed to come with him on this mission. He didn't end up showing up, so Obi-Wan does something reckless. He takes off without his master and lands on this planet called Lenhara. I can't pronounce it. So on this planet, Obi-Wan meets the inhabitants, which, the inhabitants he's met are a bunch of kids. And I wrote this was at 40% of the way through the book. I just thought of this as I was reading it. My note on it is, like, the kids Obi-Wan meets on this planet feel like the Star Wars version of the Lost Boys from Peter Pan. And if you've ever seen Peter Pan, have ever read Peter Pan, or anything related to Peter Pan, you know who the Lost Boys are. It does feel like the kids he's hanging out with feel like the Lost Boys. It's their dynamic and the way they live is very similar to me and how the Lost Boys were. If you heard that thunder, it is storming outside. So that was something that I thought was really fun. That's such a weird way of explaining it. Like, it's a Star Wars version of the Lost Boys, which it's a mix of guys and girls. It's not just boys, but I just thought, like, just their dynamic reminded me of the Lost Boys for some reason. And then at 48%, which is where I stopped reading today, I wrote, Obi-Wan has been doubting his strength in the Force throughout this whole book, because he feels like whenever he meditates, he can't connect to the Force. He doesn't know where the Force is leading him. He has a very limited connection, he feels, and he's doubting a lot of things. And then because of what I just read, I'm like, when he's probably the strongest Force user on this planet, I was like, you're literally probably the strongest Force user here, and has the strongest connection to the Force here. So I really feel like he's doubting himself. He's very insecure, as I said earlier. And that makes me really wonder, like, obviously over time as things happen, he definitely becomes more sure of himself as he becomes a Jedi Knight and a master to Anakin, and as time goes on, he definitely becomes a lot more sure of himself. I mean, I've watched the Clone Wars. He's an incredible general, and he does a great job at what he does. He becomes way more sure and stronger in the Force. But it does, hearing all of Obi-Wan's insecurities and what he was good at when he was a Padawan and how he wasn't good at connecting to the Force when he was younger, kind of explains how with Anakin, Obi-Wan wasn't ready to be a master yet. He only took on Anakin because he promised Qui-Gon when he died that he would take on Anakin. Spoilers if you've never seen Star Wars. I'm spoiling so much plot right now of the movies and shows. I feel like that's probably why Anakin didn't have a super strong connection with the Force, or like he didn't I don't really remember them ever meditating together because it's something that Jedis do or anything like that. And I'm like, that actually makes sense because Obi-Wan was never good at meditating. He was never good at sitting still. He loved lightsaber duels. He loved moving. He loved knowledge, seeking knowledge. He was a very good negotiator. That was something that he prided himself on. He's like, I would rather negotiate instead of, to avoid a fight instead of starting a fight, which is very different from how Anakin is. He will just dive in headstrong and just head first and get consequences along the way. So so far those are my thoughts. There were a few things. So we did get a hello there in this book, which was great. And then we also got, I got a bad feeling about this, which anytime I read that in the book, obviously hello there is like an iconic Obi-Wan line, that and I've got the high ground. But I've got a bad feeling about this is just an iconic Star Wars line in general, that whenever I read it or hear it on movies, that aren't part of the original trilogy or even the prequels, I'm not a sequels fan. So if that offends anybody, I'm sorry, but I'm not a sequels fan. I am a huge fan of the originals, obviously, and the prequels, but the sequels not so much. But it's so funny hearing I got a bad feeling about this because it feels overused at this point. It feels overused in my mind, but it is the most iconic line in Star Wars. That's continued to be an iconic line in Star Wars. So yeah, I'm 48% of the way through this, and I'm enjoying it. I think I accidentally cracked my spine though. It's fine, it's my book. I was like, it's fine. Maybe because I was reading it like this and didn't realize I cracked the spine, because I was just reading normal, and then sometimes I just don't realize it. But yeah, so that was my update, my Monday update. Obviously I got to 14%, and then today I got to 48, and then tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to finish it tomorrow. No, I don't think I'll finish this tomorrow. I don't think I will. I need to stall this out a little bit longer. I need to savor it. I need to enjoy it. But if it gets to I don't have really, I'm almost 50% of the way through the book, and I feel like this rating's going to be pretty average. So far I'm getting 3-star vibes. Where I'm not crazy invested in the plot. I mean, I'm getting more interested in it now because stuff's happening, but I'm not super obsessed with the plot. I feel like this one hasn't been keeping me on my toes as much. There have been moments where I was getting annoyed at Obi-Wan because I figured something out before he did, because I don't know why, but I have been. And yeah, I would say he's a little bit, I want to say he's a bit of an ego on him. Or a little bit of one, where he's he feels like he has to be the hero. He has to be the one to save these people on this planet because the planet's trying to destroy them. Or something's going on with the planet. I think the planet's sick. I actually really don't know what's going on this planet. We're getting to the thick of that right now. And then there's these really, I didn't write this down because it's part of the book, but there's these really interesting breaks that are written in italics. So it's not even really a part of the chapter, but we have these little things, these italic breaks that are written in a different person's perspective, and it's about someone who's trying to get, I'm assuming from what I have deduced, is it deduced or what I have deducted what I have figured out from reading this. I have definitely noticed that someone who's trying to get to the planet that Obi-Wan's on. he's trying to return there, and he keeps calling it home. And so much lore has, not lore, I keep saying lore, I say that in everything when like big information is dropped. A bunch of information has been discovered by Obi-Wan about this planet that he's on, that's making me concerned for where they are right now. So, wow, that's loud. So, yeah, I'm enjoying this. It's pretty good. I see. This is why I wanted to do a sci-fi, Star Wars book to start off this sci-fi reading, because I love Star Wars, and it kind of will ease me into the sci-fi mentality before I jump into Ready Player One, which I'm pretty sure is, yeah, it's right up there on that shelf somewhere. So, yeah. Yeah, those are all my thoughts right now. I do really like having this written out. I should have done this way sooner. I think tomorrow, so I'll update you on Wednesday. And tomorrow, I don't know how far I'm going to get tomorrow. I really don't know. I am trying to do this in a week, and I have a whole other book to read. So, I may finish this tomorrow and start Ready Player One. But I don't know. We'll figure it out. But yeah, let's keep reading, because I'm not gonna probably read any more of this tonight. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Hello and welcome to Thursday. It's Thursday, so I didn't update for Friday. Not Friday. Wednesday. I didn't update for yesterday. And I don't have access to my notes right now, that I did write something. So yesterday I went from 44% to 66, and then today I finished Padawan, so this is done now. This is complete. I finished it on Thursday, so let's go. Finished. Lovely. It's great. What are my thoughts? I feel like I'm weirdly... There, that's better. I felt so short. My thoughts of Padawan. Obviously, I've given you a few thoughts throughout this video, but my final thoughts, I actually really enjoyed this book. I found it entertaining, and just like, it really expanded on my opinion of Obi-Wan Kenobi. As someone who grew up watching the animated TV shows and the movies and being a huge Star Wars fan, getting to read canon books that really just add more to the character you read about is great. I really enjoyed his growth from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. It was clear, concise. Now I'm talking about the writing format. Obviously, I did really enjoy his... Let me go back to his growth. Give me a second. His growth throughout the book was just very, like normal growth of a... He's also 16 in this book, so this is before Phantom Menace, before you officially meet Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And just, yeah, his growth in it was great. I'm like, I could see his internal struggle of being one with the Force and feeling like he deserves to be a Jedi, and those feelings he didn't know if he had or not. So he did have those feelings. I also cracked the spine. I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. Sorry for people who that bothers. I did it by accident. I never crack spines on purpose, okay? It's always by accident. But I actually did really enjoy this. I think I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. It's 3.5 stars. It was good. It was really good. I enjoyed the characters-ish. I thought it was an interesting... It's funny because when you've watched all the Star Wars things as I have, when you've watched the movies, when you've watched Clone Wars, and when you watch Rebels, you feel like you kind of know every planet, not every planet, but like the whole universe really well, and then you start reading the books and you realize there's a whole lot you don't know. That's how I felt with this. I felt like there's a whole lot I learned about Kenobi and his character. So, yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. It's 3.5 stars. I think it's a good book. I would recommend it to any Star Wars fan. Would I recommend this to somebody who's not a Star Wars fan? No, because you wouldn't understand half of what goes on in the book. you would be very confused. I would not recommend reading any Star Wars book until you've seen at least the movies. And then I feel like if you watch the movies, you'd be fine. But I just care more about this character because I watch the shows as well, and he's in at least Clone Wars, all of Clone Wars, and his character was really good in that. So, 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. I would recommend to a Star Wars fan. If you're a Star Wars fan, pick up some Star Wars books, but also make sure they're canon. So I feel like I say this word a lot, and I don't know if I've ever explained it. So a canon basically means it relates to the original story, or it's true to the original story. So for an example, there are Star Wars books out there that have been considered non-canon, where if you read them, what happens in this book does not attribute to or change or affect the original storyline. It is not a part of the original storyline. So Star Wars, I'm going to use as an example, is 9 movies, and a handful of TV shows obviously thrown in there now, which are all canon, most of them. I think there are some things that aren't really that canon, but like the normal series you hear about are canon. This book is a canon book. This book takes place before Phantom Menace, when Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan were Obi-Wan, I think they had just become Master and Apprentice, or Master and Padawan at this time. They had recently become that. So this is considered canon. Anything that happens in this is considered canon in the Star Wars universe. So this stuff happened. Now, is it in a movie? Was it mentioned in a show? I don't know. But this is considered true, and this actually happened in the Star Wars canon universe. So Obi-Wan went through this, whether it's in the mentioned in a show or in a movie. It probably isn't, but this did happen. This is considered a part of that storyline. So there are some books that were written before Star Wars was owned by Disney, which those are technically Disney considers them non-canon, and books that came out after that, I think, are considered canon. So I'm going to be honest, just do research. I did a lot of research before I started reading some Star Wars books, because I wanted to read ones that were actually canon, so I wasn't getting like I talk about oh, this happened, no, it actually isn't considered true. It's almost like it's in a different universe, but it's not. It's still a Star Wars book, but it's not considered accurate to the original timeline and storyline. So this is a canon one. I think another Star Wars book I read, Dark Disciple, which is a Quinlan Vos Asajj Ventress story, that is also considered canon. And I think Master and Apprentice, which is another Star Wars book I recently bought, is also canon. So just do your research. If you're really wanting to read Star Wars books, I recommend doing the research. If you don't care if you're reading a canon or non-canon book, read whatever one you want. Because there are timeline orders if you want to read them in timeline order, because you have like the High Republic era, and then you have kind of the Clone Wars-ish. This is before Clone Wars, but almost that time. There's a lot of different time periods that books are written in, so I just recommend doing some research before you jump into Star Wars books. Alright, so that being said, my next and final book of this video, because I decided to only read 2 sci-fi books in a week, because I've been struggling finishing 3 books in a week recently. So the next book is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I can't remember if he wrote another book that I've heard of, but I think this is the only one I think I actually have heard of. This is all the reviews on it are really funny. Like this, a USA Today review is enchanting. Willy Wonka meets the Matrix. I've never seen the Matrix, but I have seen Willy Wonka. So, interesting. And then also, Huffington Post said, delightful, the grown-ups Harry Potter, which I love Harry Potter, so I think I'll like this. I think it's a sci-fi, obviously. It was named one of the best books of 2011. Wow. Nice. This was the author's first novel. Really cool. And I know there's a second book to this. Wow, there's a lot of reviews in this. Okay. So basically it's a sci-fi that deals with like virtual reality, video game, digital world stuff, which I've read something similar to this by James Dashner, who wrote the Maze Runner trilogy. He wrote Mortality Doctrine, which is, I wouldn't say it's exactly the same. I've seen the movie, so I actually kind of know a bit of the plot. This one, I think, airs way more on the video game side, like just virtual reality video game side. The other one, Mortality Doctrine, was crazy. That I would 10 out of 10 recommend that series, though. I haven't finished it yet, but it's mind-changing, confusing, crazy. But yeah. Oh yeah, it was like Ready Player 2 was the next. So there was a sequel. There is a sequel. So yeah, this is what I'll be diving into. I can read the back of this. I think I'm going to read the back of this because I need a refresher on what this is about. In the year 2044, reality is an ugly place. The only time teenage Wade Wyatt really feels alive is when he's jacked into the virtual utopia known as the Oasis. Wade's developed his life to studying the puzzles hidden within the world's digital confines, puzzles that are based on the creator's obsession with the pop culture of decades past, and that promise massive power and fortune to whoever can unlock them. But when Wade stumbles upon the first clue, he finds himself beset by players willing to kill to take this ultimate prize. The race is on, and if Wade's going to survive, he'll have to win and confront the real world he's always been so desperate to escape. So that's the back summary of this book. I'm excited. Can't wait to dive into this today. And yeah, I'll come back. I don't know if I'll come back with an update today on how far in I am, or if that'll be a Friday update. I don't know. But yeah, I will see you all. I'll see you all tomorrow. Alright, so it is now Saturday. I didn't update it all for Friday, and I haven't actually read any of this book yet today, so the updates I'm going to give you are all from yesterday. How far in am I on this? I think I'm 15% of the way through this now, and I read for 2 hours. 15% of the way through a book, read for 2 hours to get to 15%. Oh, I'm reading so slow. That's slow for me. Everybody has a different reading pace. For me, that's slow. But I did have some thoughts at like 12% and 13%. I didn't know what percents I was on, so I just put the page numbers down and then figured out the percent later. At the beginning, when I was like 12% of the way through, didn't realize I was that far through when I wrote this. There's some language in it, so if you're not comfortable reading that, I wouldn't recommend. But the story so far is pretty good. It's picking up a little bit now. It's picking up a little. I'm on like page 74 now. It's picking up a little bit more now than it was. The last 15% was a lot of talking. There's a lot of just describing the world, which isn't a bad thing. Well, it's not a bad thing. I'll get to that when I get to my other update, because I did talk about it a little bit in the next update. I also said that this really does remind me of the Mortality Doctrine series, and I'm dead. Yes, this 100% reminds me of it. Not like they're exactly the same. They aren't. The video game worlds and the way they work completely differently. There's very little similarities between it just has the same virtual reality, somewhat dystopian world vibe. They aren't exactly the same. The plot are completely different. It's just they give me the same feeling, which may end up being a problem because I'm not a huge Mortality Doctrine fan. So who knows how I'm going to feel about this one. I also want to say there was a whole bunch of, I play video games, fun fact, and I have brothers who love playing video games. So I do know a lot about certain video games, and this does talk a lot about video games. I've said video games 4 times, if it's not obvious. So I said this is a great beginner's guide to video games because, and there are many different types, there are many different kinds of video games, and the language, the lingo used in game, so an NPC or a PvP or just really any of those, like, you're like, what does that even mean? PvP means player versus player, and I said MMC. I can't remember what I just said. Ugh. So yes, there was a whole, but there's a lot of exposition in this book. A lot of just sitting there explaining things, which is probably why it took me 2 hours to get to 15%, because it's kind of boring to a certain point. I got bored. I was like, okay, when are we gonna get something interesting? When's something gonna happen? 15% of the way through the book, something happens. So the fact that it reminds me a lot of the Mortality Doctrine, which I did feel a little bit bored while reading the Mortality Doctrine. It did obviously pick up near the end, but even then I was not super invested in it. The Eye of Mind's the first one. I've already read the first two. I didn't even finish the third one. I'm going to. But I don't know how I feel about this right now. I don't think this book's gonna hit for me. It's not just, I mean, there's a decent amount of language in it. Not decent, but like there's language that I'm like, okay, alright, ignoring that. But it does, it's giving me that, like, I'm not, like, almost like it's gonna be over your head type of a book, because of all the I can close this out now, because of all the exposition that is in this book. It's like, oh yeah, it's supposed to explain everything. I'm still way over my head, and I'm not this invested in video games. Like the kid we're following, Wade Wyatt's, he's obsessed with video games, and the whole plot of this book follows him being like why he's obsessed with video games and whatever. But there's so many moments where I'm like, can we just get to something interesting? I'm bored. Okay, thank you for explaining how the Oasis works. That actually kind of helps me understand what I'm getting into while reading this. Like, the exposition's not bad, because it is helpful, because I barely understand half of what's going on in this book. So I'm like, okay, thank you for explaining it. Can you not take, like, 20 pages explaining it? I feel like it didn't need all... Like, there was a whole chapter, or, like, section of a chapter. These chapters are long, by the way. There's, like, a whole chapter that was just talking about Halliday, the guy who created the Oasis, or helped create the Oasis, and he's the one who did the whole puzzles and like the challenge to like, hey, if you find all these keys, you get my mass fortune, this guy. And I was just like, thank you, but I'm not trying to figure out this thing. I was like, I'm not playing this game. This is fake. I don't need to know all the details. I don't. So that annoyed me a little. Not annoyed me, but I'm like, can we? Because I probably would have been farther through this if it wasn't for all that exposition. These chapters are so long, too. Like, they're probably like 10 pages long on average. There may be one or two short ones in here. And this is only a 370-something page book. Give me a second. 72 book. So, I am going to keep reading it because it's gotten interesting now. I'm just saying the first 15% is like slow as a snail. It's like moving at snail's pace. And I think I'm just in the mood for books that'll keep me, like, engaged and, like, on the edge of my seat, like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? That's how The Ballad of Never After was. Closer to the end of that, it's a slow start, good, great finish, that book. I feel like I just want to be on the edge of my seat. I want to be like, what is gonna happen? And I'm not getting that right now. I may get it later. I'm holding out hope that I'll get that later, because I do think that this plot will pick up. I definitely think it's going to pick up once he discovers the first clue and, like, gets the first key and whatever, if he does end up being able to do that. I think this plot is definitely going to pick up. I just hope it is soon. Or else I'm going to be bored for 372 pages. Alright, I'm going to get back to reading. I finished this book. I finished this book. And I'm giving it 2.75 stars. Immediately had a review ready for this book when I finished it. I liked it. Obviously, I gave it 3.75 stars. It was almost a 3-star. I think it was just the language that kind of was like, okay, whatever. It doesn't bother me, but sometimes I'm just like, okay, moving on. I did really enjoy it though. I loved all the really nerdy details that are thrown in here, because I mean, our main character is a video game nerd. It's great. It's hilarious, and I would say this is almost kind of very niche to huge video game or pop culture fans of the 70s and 80s. There are a lot of references in there that I did not understand because I was A, not born in the 70s or 80s if it's not obvious, and B, don't have a huge obsession with that era of video games or time. Now, do I know a lot of the video games they're talking about? Yes, because I've heard about most of them are very iconic. A lot of the movies and TV shows and book references that were made in this, I did understand a few of them. But I would say going into it, if you're not a super nerd, where you don't read a lot of things or play a lot of video games or have like a lot of knowledge in that area, this book will be so confusing. This book will confuse you to no end. Because there were some moments where I was confused, and I mean, yes, again, I don't know every little thing about the era that all the Easter eggs and nerdy details were in, but I was still like, wait, what are you talking about? What does that even mean? It got super complicated at some points. In my Fable review, I said I got confused. This book made me confused, but there are obviously moments where I was like, yeah, actually, that was kind of cool. It is slow. There's a lot of exposition, which basically is there's a lot of him explaining things to you, which again makes sense due to the fact that it is a very nerdy book, very geek heavy information. So there's a lot of exposition. There was like one whole chapter that I skimmed over it because I was like, I'm sure this is useful, but not for me. I was like, I don't need to know all this information. This information does not need locked in this head. So if you're not, it's almost like reading, there were parts where it was like almost like reading a textbook on video game history at some points, especially like if this world's video game history. Ernest Cline his world building was crazy. A lot of people are like fantasy world building's insane. Try reading a sci-fi, because this all has to kind of make sense in some way. Fantasy, you can throw in a random element in that and just be like, that's just how the world works, and you're like, yeah, it's fantasy. Isn't defined by the laws of our Earth. It can be completely made up and not be a problem. A sci-fi is a science fiction, so it's kind of tied down to the laws of science and how science works. Even though this takes place in 2044, so obviously futuristic, but even then, like it's limited to still things that like make sense in science. Like it can't, like there's no magic to make things work. You can't just say, oh yeah, that's just how this thing works. No, there's an explanation as to how it works. There's an explanation in like coding and I'm not a science fiction nerd, so I don't really know a whole lot of terms in this. But like there's explanations, scientific explanations for why these things happen. So I feel like creating a sci-fi world is probably a lot harder than a fantasy one, coming from someone who created a fantasy world in her book. I really just had to be like, wow, props to any sci-fi writer, especially one that makes such an in-depth, extremely well-researched, detailed book like this. Because again, there were a lot of historical Easter eggs and facts that were in here that I'm like, I had no idea this was a thing. I was like, I didn't know all these nitty-gritty details of these things. So this was very well researched of like the 70s and 80s time period, even like the 90s. And this book came out in 2011, so it's kind of old. Because considering the year that this book's based in is 2044, I don't know if we're closer to 2044 than we are to, no, we're not. Because 2011 would only be like less than 10 years ago. So, not less. A little over 10 years ago. And this would be 20 years from now. Never mind. But still, And our main character, Wade, they tell us what year he was born. He was born in 2005. He was born this year. That is such a funny thing about reading futuristic sci-fi books that came out. How long ago was 2011? I don't remember. Somebody can do the math in the comments. I don't have that brain power right now. It's late. And like, yeah, like the kid that we follow was born this year, the year that we are in currently. I found that really, really cool. And again, there were just like so many, it was just really confusing. I think that's why also that it got 2.75 stars. I was just confused for half the book. But diving into sci-fi, that's something I don't always say. I'm rarely ever confused in books. Normally I catch on pretty quickly, but sci-fi is the one genre that if I pick it up and read it, I get confused very quickly. Because it's just not, my brain's not used to computing that, I guess, or understanding that. Fantasy and sci-fi are two completely different genres, obviously. So fantasy, understanding a fantasy world isn't that difficult for me. A, I read a lot of fantasy, and B, my brain has learned to comprehend magic systems and made up worlds and people groups and creatures and whatever. I have a backlog of fantasy knowledge because I've read so much. On the opposite end, I've read very little sci-fi, so I'm kind of coming to most sci-fis knowing very little about the genre and knowing very little of how this genre works. The sci-fis I have read, I haven't really always enjoyed all of them. I would say my favorite sci-fi series I read was definitely Renegades, and that one felt more sci-fi, like superhero sci-fi, so people had like powers and stuff, and that's actually very simple and easy to understand. That Renegades is very easy to understand. I 10 out of 10 recommend Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I think that's probably my favorite sci-fi series I've read. I did like Padawan, which I read earlier on in this video. That was a pretty good Star Wars book. See, Star Wars is easy for me to understand. I grew up watching it, so that's ingrained in the back of my head. But yeah, so finish this. Yeah, that's the end of this video. And by the way, it is Sunday. I didn't say that at the beginning of this. It is Sunday, and I finished this on Sunday. I started Padawan, the first book in this video, not Saturday, Sunday. Jeez. Sunday night. So technically, I kind of did finish this book. It's been a week. I did it in a week. I read 2 sci-fi books in a week. Now, which one did I like more? I think that's pretty obvious. This got 3 stars from, let's get 3.5 stars. This got 2.75. So, I liked Padawan more. But again, that may be my Star Wars bias showing. I feel like if I read a Star Wars book over, that might be my Star Wars bias showing. So, read these 2 books in this video. Really enjoyed filming this. Thank you, subscribers, for picking it out. And I'd also like to give a little shout out to my brother. So my older brother, because this video is sci-fi oriented, and this book was all about video games, this is such a weird plug, I'm sorry, this is probably sounding really out of place. My older brother has a YouTube channel. I will put his profile photo, not profile, whatever on here. He does video game content. He films himself playing Minecraft. And just to give you a little context, we've all been playing Minecraft for a really long time. And yeah, I encourage you to go check him out. I know that most of you guys are book people. So if you don't want to go watch his Minecraft videos, that's fine. But I still encourage you to check him out. He wants to be able to live stream, so he needs a handful of more subscribers. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'm sure it's kind of long. Most of my videos have been racking up hours recently. They've been kind of long. Yeah, so please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!